There are stories too dark for history books. This is one of them. In the winter of 1892, a railway inspector stumbled upon a cabin deep in the pine forests of northern Pennsylvania. He was looking for a missing survey crew. What he found instead were 3 identical chairs, all pointed toward a brick hearth, still warm, and a trapdoor beneath a bearskin rug. When he opened it, he vomited before he could even scream. The newspapers never printed what was in that cellar. They said it was a gas leak, but the men who hauled up the bodies didn't sleep again for years. Some of them went blind. One disappeared entirely. The cabin belonged to the Whitmore brothers, Elias, Silas, and Jonah. 3 names wiped from official records shortly after the Civil War. No death certificates, no census listings, no baptismal records. But the land deeds remain, and if you know where to look, buried inside the faded ledgers of a Presbyterian orphanage, their true legacy begins to surface. You see, this story isn't just about murder, it's about control, over life, death, belief, and even memory. The Whitmore brothers weren't just farmers or hermits, as local legends suggest. They were builders of something older than government and more seductive than religion. They believed they could engineer salvation by perfecting the minds of young boys. By the time the railroad arrived, 39 children had vanished. Only 4 were ever found, mute, mutilated, and marked. Each bore an identical symbol carved just beneath the scalp. Not with knives, but with heat. Branded like cattle. And beneath every one of their names, scrawled in desperate pencil on the walls of the cellar, was a phrase repeated over and over. Sanctum via crucis. The path to holiness is through pain. Tonight, I'm going to take you down that path, deeper than you've ever gone. But I have to warn you, once you hear what the Whitmore brothers believed, what they built, and what they did, you'll never unsee it, and you won't be the same man you were. Because this isn't just history, it's a ritual, and now you're part of it. Scene opens with an old sepia photograph, a stern man with a high collar and hollow eyes. His face is half burned by time. A caption fades in, Reverend Amos Fletcher, 1889, last seen alive. Before the world ever heard the name Whitmore, one man had already tried to stop them. His name was Reverend Amos Fletcher, a traveling preacher who specialized in frontier exorcisms, purging sin from lawless territories and bringing structure to God-forsaken towns. In 1889, he arrived in Creswell Hollow, a lumber outpost where strange things had already begun to surface. Children spoke of silent men in black coats watching them from the tree line. Wolves refused to enter the woods, and every Sunday, one more pew was empty, with no explanation. Fletcher, a skeptic of superstition, thought it was drunkenness, disease, or worse, cult activity. He wrote in his final journal entry, "There are forces gathering here. They speak not in words, but in hunger. I believe 3 men live beyond the ridge, untouched by God, unseen by neighbor. I go to find them before more are taken." That was the last anyone heard from him. 12 days later, his horse was found outside the Whitmore cabin, reins tied neatly to a tree, the saddle still warm. Inside they found only 2 things, a book of Protestant hymns, pages burned in a spiral, and a set of eyeglasses crushed flat, laid across a child's sketch of 3 stick figures under a triangle of fire. Locals whispered of a trial held in secret, a kind of inversion of justice. Not a courtroom, but a table of knives. Witnesses claimed they saw a figure wandering the woods in Fletcher's coat months later, thinner, eyes white as milk, and humming old liturgical songs in reverse. But no body was ever recovered. And here's the strange part. 7 years later, a man named A. Fletcher checked into a sanatorium in Iowa. Under heavy sedation, he claimed he had been unborn by 3 masked prophets. The doctors dismissed it as psychosis. But his blood type, birthmark, and dental records matched. It was him. He had been missing for nearly a decade, yet hadn't aged a day. Camera slowly pans over a charred wooden plank, with dark stains etched into geometric shapes. A voice whispers in Latin, "Non omnis moriar," not all of me shall die. In 1906, during a routine land inspection, the Whitmore cabin was finally condemned. It had stood abandoned for over a decade, boarded up by order of the Creswell Sheriff's Office, though no official documentation ever existed. Locals avoided it. Children dared each other to touch its rotting porch, but none ever crossed the threshold. That is, until a Yale-trained cartographer named Vincent Hale was hired to remap the area for incoming mining operations. What he found would never be published in any geological survey. While measuring structural points of the collapsed floor, Hale uncovered something beneath the boards, not rot, not stone, but what he described in his personal notebook as an architectural diagram made entirely of dried blood. Not splatter, not chaos. A map, laid out with precision using human hemoglobin across 16 pine planks. The pattern resembled both a pentagram and a church nave, intersected by lines marking lunar phases, solstices, and Gregorian calendar dates. In the center was a name scratched in with bone or nail, Jonahus Primus, Latin, Jonah the First. But the cabin had only ever been linked to three brothers, Elias, Silas, and Jonah. So who was Jonah the First? A father? A disciple? A god? Vincent Hale reported his findings to the local constable, and then vanished 3 days later. The only evidence of his presence was a stack of wax-sealed letters mailed to his brother, a priest in Illinois. In one of them, Vincent wrote, "They were building something, yes, but not a house, not a church, a conduit. I believe it still breathes, and if I've understood the symbols correctly, it will awaken again on the 7th eclipse." The 7th eclipse came in 2023, and something did awaken. In a nearby town, a series of children were found in their beds, unmoving, eyes open, hearts still beating, but completely unresponsive, as if their minds had been emptied. Each child had a drawing under their pillow, 3 stick figures beneath a triangle of fire, same as the one found with Reverend Fletcher's glasses. Elmswood Orphanage sat on the outskirts of Langdon County, just 11 miles from the Whitmore cabin. Officially, it housed up to 43 children at any given time. Unofficially, that number fluctuated, often mysteriously. Between 1879 and 1893, records show over 70 children were registered, but only 38 were ever adopted or buried. The others, simply marked, transferred. No location, no signatures, no trail. In 1922, a fire destroyed most of Elmswood's physical structure, but not before a groundskeeper, a man named Samuel Kern, had smuggled out 5 boxes of files and hid them in the crawl space of a church rectory in nearby Montrose. The boxes weren't found until 1981 during renovation work. What they contained rewrote everything investigators thought they knew. Inside were drawings, dozens, all by children between the ages of 6 and 11. Each showed 3 identical men with blank faces and outstretched hands. In every sketch, the men stood in front of a large wooden house with no windows, and beneath it, a black spiral descending into the earth. But one folder stood out, marked only with a red X. Inside, a signed letter from Jonah Whitmore himself, written in looping cursive. A contract for transfer of guardianship for 7 unnamed children. And a photograph, faded and torn, showing 7 boys standing outside a root cellar, their heads shaved, their eyes empty. The back of the photograph read, "Initiation, Phase 1, the hollowing." The language in Jonah's letter was clinical, almost scientific. He wrote of removing contamination, of correcting divine error, and of converting innocence into utility. But the most chilling part, he ends the letter with a quote, "The soul is not granted, it is engineered." To this day, no trace of the 7 boys has ever surfaced, but their names may be hidden beneath the blood map you already heard about. Because one of those lunar alignments Hale traced, it fell precisely on the date those transfers were approved. Coincidence or calibration? In 1897, a patient was admitted to the Crowhurst Sanatorium for the mentally afflicted in upstate New York. He was found wandering naked on a frozen road covered in scratches and speaking only in backwards Latin. The admitting doctor, Dr. Emery Vallin, recorded the man's name as Thomas H., full surname redacted in official records, later recovered as Halloway. Thomas was 14 years old. His feet were frostbitten. His body showed signs of long-term malnutrition and deep circular burn marks on both palms, like stigmata, but cauterized. For weeks he refused to speak anything but phrases like, "The furnace is hungry. They said the sky must burn to let the light in. We are the blueprint. We are the offering." But on the 33rd night, Dr. Vallin claimed Thomas spoke in a clear, lucid voice. He asked for pen and paper. What he wrote would later be dubbed the Crowhurst Confession. It is now locked in the restricted archives of the New York State Psychological Archives, but a fragment was leaked in 1974 by a doctoral student who reportedly took her own life just weeks later. Here is an excerpt from Thomas's confession. There were 3 of them, always together. They didn't speak with mouths. They hummed, low, like bees in bone. The one called Jonah carried a book with no title. It knew your thoughts. It changed if you lied. They made us kneel inside the circle. They asked for the one thing we loved most. If we couldn't say it, they'd take it from us. At night they'd hum louder. The floor would open. There were no stairs, just falling. We landed in the dark room, the one with mirrors that didn't show your face. I saw myself die 11 times, but only once did I scream. They liked that. They said I could leave, but I'd have to carry the key in me. I don't know what it is, but I can feel it moving when I sleep. Thomas attempted suicide a week later by biting off the tip of his tongue and choking on his own blood. He survived, but never spoke again. Strangely, a CT scan taken in 1943, when he was still alive, revealed a metallic object embedded in his lower spine. Not shrapnel, not surgical. Its shape, a triangle inside a circle. The same symbol found carved on the cellar door of the Whitmore cabin. In the spring of 1901, a substitute schoolteacher named Miss Evelyn Marlowe was assigned to Cresswell Township Schoolhouse No. 3 after the regular instructor abruptly resigned, citing recurring visions and a choking presence. Evelyn's stay would last only 17 days, but what she documented in her personal ledger became the first written evidence of a shared language among several children once connected to the Whitmore brothers. She described them as eerily well-behaved, silent unless spoken to, always seated together, 5 boys in identical coats, each marked with a red thread stitched inside the collar. No parents ever attended meetings. No home addresses were ever confirmed. The boys gave only first names: Abram, Josiah, Linus, Caleb, Ephraim. But Evelyn noticed something stranger. The boys never called each other by those names. Instead, they used phonetic codes that didn't belong to any known dialect. Words like Maruk, used before standing up; Sullivan, whispered when answering questions; Troynark, always said before drawing the triangle symbol. After class one day, Evelyn caught them scratching symbols beneath the floorboards with bits of sharpened bone, not pencils. She confiscated one of their notebooks. Inside were hundreds of symbols, arranged in sequences. Some resembled Hebrew, others Norse runes, but some were not from any known script. A professor at Boston College later remarked that the patterns matched high-frequency sound maps, the kind seen in cymatics experiments decades later. Then Evelyn made a crucial mistake. She tried to translate the word they repeated most, Nahiliath. After writing it 3 times, she fell unconscious in front of her students. When she awoke in her boarding room, 3 of the 5 boys were gone. No footsteps, no witnesses, their names erased from the school register in black ink, smeared as if someone had tried to burn it with breath instead of fire. Evelyn left the school the next day and spent the rest of her life in silence, never teaching again. She died in 1949. And her final belongings included only one item from her past: a slip of paper with a drawing of the triangle and circle symbol, and beneath it, written shakily, Nihiliath dreams beneath the wood. On March 2, 1914, authorities responded to a series of frantic calls from Langdon Ridge, a sparsely populated stretch of farmland near the Pennsylvania-New York border. Locals reported screams, flashing lights, and a constant low hum like bees trapped in a metal jar, coming from a strange triangular structure deep in the forest. What police found would become known in whispered tones as the Triangle House murders. An event so gruesome, so inexplicable, that it was immediately sealed under military authority. For years, the incident was dismissed as mass hysteria. But the crime scene photos, leaked in 1972, told a very different story. Inside the house, 11 bodies, all arranged in a perfect circle on the floor of the main chamber. Each body was faceless, their skin peeled clean from skulls, eyes removed, yet no sign of blood splatter anywhere. In the center of the circle, a large stone basin filled not with blood, but with black sand, later determined to be a synthetic compound containing traces of iron, bone dust, and an unknown organic polymer, etched around the basin in archaic Latin, mortem perfectus dat portam. A perfect death opens the gate. The victims ranged in age from 12 to 66, school teachers, farmers, even a priest. None had known each other. None had even been reported missing. The most disturbing detail, they were all wearing the same symbol, sewn into their clothes with black thread, hidden on the inside seam of their collars. A triangle inside a circle, surrounded by a ring of 13 dots. That symbol matched identical carvings found beneath the Whitmore Brothers' cellar nearly 30 years prior. And there was one survivor. A young girl, no older than 9, found locked in a hidden room beneath the stairs. Her mouth was sewn shut with gold thread, not crudely, but with surgical precision. She had carved something into the wooden walls using her fingernails. Jonah is not gone, just buried. When surgeons finally removed the thread from her lips, she only said one word, over and over again, until her voice gave out, "Return." She was placed in state custody and vanished from the system within 6 months. No trace, no foster file, no adoption. Gone. As for the Triangle House, it was burned to the ground 2 weeks later. Not by arson, but by order. From whom? No one knows, but fragments of its blueprints still survive, and when placed over the blood map from the Whitmore cabin, they align perfectly. In the spring of 1926, the Creswell Historical Society approved a project to unearth colonial burial sites believed to contain lost Revolutionary War relics. The dig site, a patch of land half a mile east of the old Whitmore cabin. The team of 12 was led by Dr. Horace W. Merrin, a geologist and amateur antiquarian. After just 2 days of excavation, they struck a smooth black surface, unlike any stone native to the region. Beneath it, a circular opening, 9 feet in diameter, lined with obsidian steps spiraling downward into total darkness. They called it the Black Staircase. Initial explorations were cautious. The staircase descended exactly 33 steps before reaching a sealed archway, carved with symbols identical to those found in Evelyn Marlowe's school ledger and the Crowhurst Confession. Dr. Merrin sketched the symbols and sent them to the Smithsonian. He never received a reply. Then the dreams began. 4 workers reportedly refused to return to the site after claiming they'd heard voices from the stone, whispering phrases in dead languages. One claimed he was shown the day of his death. Another suffered a seizure after touching the archway and later clawed his own eyes out, muttering, "The stairs go down, but they don't end. Not really. They just forget." But the most chilling part came on day 6 of the dig. The team returned in the morning to find all 33 obsidian steps had been stripped clean, as if peeled away one by one. No tool marks, no debris, just an empty shaft with black dust clinging to the edges. Inside the pit, written in a circular pattern along the wall, "Nihiliath returns when the stair is forgotten." Dr. Merrin vanished the next day. His notes were later recovered from a Pennsylvania antique dealer who had no recollection of how he acquired them. In those pages, Merrin proposed something deeply disturbing. The Whitmore brothers didn't worship the dark, they were architects of it, and this stairway, this is not a relic, It's a rib, one piece of a much larger body, one built underground for something waiting to surface. After that, the project was abruptly defunded, the pit was filled with concrete, the land declared unstable and sealed off by the state. But sometimes, late at night, nearby residents still report a low hum beneath the soil, as if something far below is breathing. On a summer night in 1933, an amateur radio operator named Gideon Sorrell, working out of Hudson, New York, claimed to have intercepted a broadcast unlike anything he'd heard before, or since. He wasn't looking for it. He was tuning into a baseball game on WGN when his equipment suddenly shifted frequency, on its own. The broadcast lasted 4 minutes and 26 seconds. According to Sorrell's logbook, the audio began with a low mechanical hum, followed by a child's voice reciting something unintelligible, a language no one could identify. Then came the real anomaly. At precisely 2 minutes and 11 seconds in, a phrase repeated in perfect English, emotionless, metallic, layered over itself dozens of times. 13 awaken, 9 descend. 3 remain, 1 opens, 1 opens, 1 opens. The audio ended with what Sorrell described as a sharp ringing tone, followed by absolute silence, not static. Silence, like something had stopped the air. The next day, Sorrell sent the recording to the Federal Radio Commission. He never heard back. But 3 days later, a man in a black coat visited his home, asking questions about his equipment. No ID, no agency name. He referred to the recording only as the Nihiliath frequency. Sorrell was found dead a week later, in his workshop. No signs of struggle, but his eardrums had ruptured, and his face was frozen in what coroner notes called a look of profound awe or terror. The reel-to-reel tape was never recovered, but a partial copy was found in 1961 by his grandson, hidden behind the workshop wall. Broken, warped, but partially audible. Experts who analyzed it described frequencies below human hearing embedded in the track. One physicist, Dr. Malcolm Yu, suggested, "This recording was not meant for human ears. It's designed to be heard by something else, or by us, after we've changed. But here's where it gets worse. When played through a spectrogram, the waveform formed a symbol. You already know which one. A triangle inside a circle, surrounded by 13 dots. The triangle in circle symbol has haunted every trace of the Whitmore Brothers' legacy, from cellar walls to orphan ledgers, from branded children to the frequency Gideon Sorrell captured. But one detail has never been fully explained. The 13 dots that encircle the triangle. 12 of them form a perfect clock-like ring, but the 13th, the last one, is always off. In every instance where the symbol has reappeared, photos, sketches, carvings, even spectral analysis of the 1933 radio transmission, the 13th dot moves. It appears at 11 o'clock on the orphan drawings, at 2 o'clock on the burned hymn book from Reverend Fletcher, at 6 o'clock on the schoolboy's etched floorboard, at exact center on the stomach of one of the Triangle House victims, and in one chilling case, outside the circle entirely, as if stepping away. Scholars, occultists, and cryptographers have all tried to interpret this anomaly. One theory proposed by semioticist Dr. Ingrid Noval in 1985 suggests that the symbol functions like a map of presence, with each dot representing a vessel for an ancient force known only as the 13 Architects. She posited that 12 are active in the structure, the system built by the Whitmores, but the 13th is either missing, wandering, or choosing. Its shifting location might represent a search for the next opener. And here's where it gets disturbing. In every location where the 13th dot appeared, something happened shortly afterward. A fire at the Creswell Town Archives, a mass fainting at a nearby school, the disappearance of a family of 4 in 1966, and in 2019, the collapse of a rural church during communion, with no structural explanation. The walls of the church bore a new version of the symbol, freshly painted, not by brush, but by heat, burned into the plaster. The 13th dot. It was inverted, placed at the bottom tip of the triangle, pointing down, as if something below was finally rising. For over a century, scattered evidence has pointed to a ritual at the heart of the Whitmore legacy, a system not just of disappearance or madness, but of selection. In 1978, a private investigator named Marion Holt, hired to look into the Triangle House case for surviving family members, compiled a theory. It would never be published. The manuscript was seized by authorities and labeled cognito hazardous in the margin of the official seizure report. A single page leaked. It was titled The Opener. Holt believed that everything the Whitmore brothers built, the cabin, the cellar, the staircase, the spiral maps, the numbered symbols, was designed for one purpose: to locate and prepare a single individual capable of opening the structure. Not a key in the literal sense, but a living trigger. Someone whose mind, trauma, and symbolic weight matched the pattern carved into their system. And here's what's chilling. Every time someone came close to the truth, Reverend Fletcher, Evelyn Marlowe, Thomas Halloway, Gideon Sorrell, the 13th Dot moved. Not randomly, toward them. Holt listed over 47 such individuals across a 130-year span. Each of them had a near-death experience before age 10, a missing parent or twin, a period of unexplainable silence lasting more than 33 hours, and a repeated phrase written or spoken unconsciously. Let me see. Always those three words. No context. Always written in lowercase. He concluded the following. The structure is a machine. The 13 are the builders. But it can only run when one walks willingly through the final gate, believing they chose it themselves. The opener doesn't even know they are chosen until it's too late. In a chilling twist, Marion Holt's own name appeared on page 47 of the list he compiled, in handwriting that wasn't his. He was found dead 3 days after mailing the manuscript to his daughter. Cause of death: cranial infarction due to sudden pressure drop. In plain words, his brain imploded. No sign of trauma, no blunt force, just a collapsed skull, as if something inward pulled too hard. On the wall of his office, scrawled in chalk, were 3 words: let me see. In 1987, during an illegal excavation beneath what was once the Whitmore homestead, now private farmland in Langdon County, a group of amateur urban explorers uncovered a sealed stone crypt buried 17 feet below ground. Inside it, a wooden box wrapped in linen, and inside that box, a single journal bound in human skin. The pages were intact, but the writing, every word was reversed, not just right to left. The very lettering was mirrored, as if designed to be read only in reflection, or by something not bound by human perception. It became known as the Jonah Codex. Forensic dating placed the book's creation between 1883 and 1885, aligning perfectly with the peak of the Whitmore disappearances. While most scholars refuse to even touch the document, one linguist from McGill University, Dr. Rosalind Keene, spent 4 years decoding just the first 60 pages. Her notes were never published. She vanished in 1991. But in a now declassified field tape, she whispers the following to her assistant: "This isn't writing, it's constructive language. It builds something. Every sentence forms a pattern that isn't visible on paper. It's meant to be heard, not read." And indeed, when the first 12 decoded pages were run through a waveform translator, the resulting spectrogram formed the now familiar pattern: a triangle inside a circle, surrounded by 12 fixed dots and one floating. But what does the Codex say? Here are selected translations from the Jonah Codex, the first true insight into the mind of Jonah Whitmore himself. "We tried voice, but they do not hear voice. They hear shape, motion, symmetry, so we made the song from silence, the message from harm. The children are necessary. They are the only clean clay. You cannot build on corrupted foundation. I did not invent Nihiliath. I only revealed him. He was always here, beneath the root, beneath the name, beneath the knowing. To open the eye is to bleed the world, but once opened, it never closes again. That is the gift. The final page, decoded just before Dr. Keene's disappearance, contains a single sentence repeated 33 times. The 13th is watching. The 13th is waiting. The 13th is you. And beneath it, one word scratched so deeply into the paper that it tore through the page. Sever. In 2002, a documentary crew researching abandoned Pennsylvania ghost towns got word of a collapsed cellar beneath an old farmhouse in Langdon County, land once tied to the Whitmore Brothers. The crew, led by filmmaker Grant Lyle, hoped to record B-roll for a History Channel special. What they captured instead was later classified as evidence, though no crime was officially recorded. The crew entered through what appeared to be a storm-drained tunnel behind a fallen oak. The tunnel ran deeper than expected, nearly 200 feet underground. As the team descended, handheld footage shows a perfectly preserved stone corridor, carvings along the walls, identical to the Jonah Codex symbols, and at the end, a black door standing upright in a dirt wall, with no frame, no hinges, and no handle. Then, the footage begins to distort. At exactly 38 minutes and 12 seconds, the audio cuts. No wind, no breathing, just a low subsonic pulse, too deep to register on standard monitors, but later detected using a directional mic. The crew begins speaking in broken phrases. One mutters, "It's not a door, it's an instruction." Another turns and looks into the camera, his eyes rolled completely back, though he's still speaking calmly. "I think I've always been here." The screen flickers violently. The final 23 seconds of the tape, marked in red grease pencil, show a figure moving across the back wall. But here's the thing. No one was back there. The figure is tall, too tall, nearly 8 feet, but glides sideways, dragging its hand along the stone. Its hand leaves no shadow. Its head turns, slowly, and in a single frame-stuttered instant, it looks directly at the camera. Then the tape ends. No sound, no signal, just flat black. The footage was turned over to authorities. Most of it was accidentally erased, but one freeze frame made it into the hands of a conspiracy archive. It shows the wall behind the entity, and etched across the stone, a phrase repeated endlessly in spirals. "You are the 13th, you are the 13th, you are the..." And beneath it, barely visible unless brightened digitally, a triangle, inside a circle, surrounded by 12 dots. The 13th dot, it's on the lens. On April the 7th, 2017, 13 unrelated individuals, spanning 9 countries, speaking 7 different languages with no contact between them, were reported to have simultaneously entered a state of complete silence. Not catatonia, not unconsciousness. They were fully aware, but simply stopped speaking. Medical teams, family members, and bystanders reported the same behavior across every case. Subjects sat or stood completely still, their eyes moved rapidly, tracking something invisible, and after precisely 1 hour and 11 minutes, each began drawing. What did they draw? A triangle inside a circle, surrounded by 12 small dots, and a 13th dot. Outside the circle, all 13 drew it in the exact same spot, upper right corner of the page. In Buenos Aires, the subject carved it into the floorboards with their teeth. In Oslo, the symbol appeared in condensation on a bathroom mirror before the subject even moved. And in Toronto, the subject, a 10-year-old girl who had never spoken a word in her life, looked up after drawing the symbol and whispered her first sentence, "He is almost here." Doctors ran blood work, neurological scans, psychological tests. There was no explanation, no shared trauma, no mass psychosis. The only link? Every one of them had either a missing sibling, a direct ancestor from Langdon County, Pennsylvania, or a history of spontaneous mirror writing during childhood. Governments quickly classified the cases. Public news outlets were told the events were part of a TikTok challenge. Most people believed it. But a Reddit user, later identified as user 13opener, posted surveillance footage from one of the hospital rooms. In the background, as the child draws the symbol, you can hear whispering under the hospital bed monitor. When the audio is reversed and slowed by 33%, the voice says, "He will wear their voice, he will wear him, or their skin. But he will not be them." The 13th opens when the 12 forget. The account was banned within 24 hours. The footage was scrubbed. But the image remains, passed in whispers, screenshots, and scratched into desks, into walls, into bone. When the Jonah Codex was first discovered in 1987, archivists documented 211 pages, but early scans made by Dr. Rosalind Keene, the linguist who decoded the first symbols, referenced 212. One was missing, not lost, removed. In 2019, that missing page resurfaced. It was anonymously mailed to a former archivist at the Creswell Library inside a black envelope. No return address, no fingerprints, just a note tucked inside reading, "This is the only thing I could carry with me. He knows the rest. EK." The page doesn't match Jonah's handwriting. It's written in a different style, frantic, smeared, words bleeding into each other, some phrases scratched in by what appear to be fingernails, not pen. The ink? Tests revealed it contains no known pigment, but under UV light it pulses at 0.33 Hz, the same frequency embedded in the 1933 Langdon tape. The text has been only partially translated. Here's what we know. He lied. There are not 13. There were never 13. There is only one, and it wears the names. Jonah was not the prophet. He was the echo, the name they gave their knife. He opened because he was told to. I open because I have no choice. Do not follow the dot. Do not draw the dot. Do not let them mark you. If you hear the hum, move. If you see the triangle, close your eyes. If you dream of the staircase, wake someone before it ends, or you'll finish it alone. The 13th is not a person. It is a whole, and it is hungry. And at the bottom of the page, unlike anything else in the Codex, a child's handprint, in black, with 6 fingers. On October 31st, 2023, at precisely 1300 hours, every active radio tower within 15 miles of Langdon County, Pennsylvania, commercial, emergency, amateur, was overridden. Not hacked, not jammed, overridden. The event lasted 13 minutes exactly. It is now referred to by archivists and forbidden signal researchers as the 13th transmission. No one has publicly taken credit. No transmitter was ever located, but the full recording survives, saved by a private weather radio operator who had left a cassette rolling by accident. What was broadcast defied explanation. Minute 1 to 4. A low-frequency pulse matching the tone from the 1933 Langdon tape, the sound of wet footsteps echoing through what sounds like stone hallways, and a chorus of children humming, always just below audible clarity. Minute 5. The hum stops. A voice speaks, but the voice is not human, not entirely. It is layered, overlapping itself, as if a dozen mouths were trying to say the same sentence at once, a sound somewhere between chanting and retching. The gate was not sealed, it was forgotten. You remember it now, therefore it opens. The 13th has chosen, we are beneath, you are above, we will bridge. Minute 6-9, the signal warps. White noise becomes breathing. Breathing becomes words, hidden inside the waveform, only revealed through spectrogram decoding. What do they say? Let me see. Let me see. Repeated 333 times. Minute 10. A scream. Not from the broadcast, from one of the radio engineers monitoring the towers. He begins to scream before the words are audible. He is recorded shouting, "It's not sound, it's inside, it's crawling up." He passed out. His heart stopped for 33 seconds. When he awoke, he wrote down a single shape. You already know what it was. But this time, there were no dots. Just the triangle, alone, and a jagged line splitting it down the center. Minute 11 to 13. A final voice, clear, human, female. Believed to be Evelyn Marlowe, the schoolteacher from 1901. Her voice reconstructed from phonetic records and perfectly matched. She whispers, "It was never three brothers. It was one voice wearing three faces. Don't follow it. Don't finish this. He doesn't want the world. He wants a mirror." Click. The broadcast ends. All radio towers shut down. FCC officials arrive the next day, citing anomalous electromagnetic discharge. No recordings officially acknowledged. The engineer who survived, gone, vanished, desk empty. His last email subject line, "The 13th is listening." In 1996, an archivist working in the Vatican Apostolic Archive uncovered a misfiled document within a locked chest of non-canonized theological warnings. The letter was dated October 13, 1844, over 20 years before the Whitmore brothers were first mentioned in Pennsylvania land records. Its envelope bore a single phrase in Latin, "Non tangere, non verta, non obdi." Do not touch, do not turn, do not open. But the seal had already been broken. The contents were handwritten in a mix of Latin and a non-standard dialect of ancient Enochian, a language associated with apocryphal angelic speech, long rejected by mainstream theology. The signature at the bottom read, Faculdus Adriax, a Dominican scholar and demonologist, last seen alive in 1845. The letter is addressed not to the Vatican, but to an unnamed cardinal, and it warns of a sacred architecture spreading beneath the earth, detectable only by patterns in silence, repetition, and decay. Selected translations include, "The dream returns to those with missing halves, the ones whose names repeat in dreams, whose mothers are shadows. They will see the stairs. I have glimpsed the 13th, not a demon, not an angel. It is what remains after choice. The symbol they draw is not a warning, it is a map. The triangle is the lock, the circle is the cage, the dots are the gates. There are 13 gates, 12 are sealed, 1 remains open. If you receive this letter, burn it. If you cannot burn it, bury it. If you cannot bury it, speak its name backward and bleed." There is no record of whether the cardinal ever replied. But 4 months later, records show a missionary church in Langdon County was quietly commissioned under a false diocese name. The property? Exact coordinates where the Whitmore cabin would be built 20 years later. Some believe the Vatican tried to stop the structure, whereas others think they tried to contain it. And the final line of the letter, scrawled diagonally across the page, stands apart from the rest. "It does not come to take the world, it comes to take the 13th, and once it has the 13th, it can build." Shall I continue with section 18, the Creswell map, the diagram found etched into the inside of a skull, showing all 13 gates, and the final one labeled with a name that's still redacted in every surviving copy? Then look closely, because this next map was never drawn. It was grown, etched not on paper, but on bone. And every gate on it leads downward. In 2006, during renovations to the Creswell Historical Cemetery, workers unearthed an unmarked grave near the edge of the Whitmore family plot. The coffin contained no clothing, no jewelry, no nameplate, just a skeleton. But the skull was covered in symbols. CT scans revealed that the carvings were not etched post-mortem. They were grown into the bone, fused at the cellular level, as if the skull itself had been instructed to grow a map. They called it the Creswell map. Its markings matched no known topography, but when laid over historic land records, the 13 dots aligned with 13 specific sites across the northeastern U.S. The Triangle House ruins, the Black Staircase, the original Langdon Church, the Creswell Schoolhouse, the Whitmore Cellar, a stone well in Vermont, a burned asylum in Maine, a defunct train tunnel in upstate New York, a shuttered coal shaft in Ohio, a rootless tree grove in New Hampshire, the basement of a demolished textile mill, a sunken stone ring off the New Jersey coast, and the final location, redacted. In every copy, every scan, every sketch. Attempting to digitize the name causes software failure. Photographing the word blurs the image. Handwritten copies smudge themselves. One archivist tried to speak the name aloud. He suffered a hemorrhage and died mid-syllable. But the skull offers one more clue. Beneath the map, where the jawbone should have been, there's only a single word, etched backward, just like the Jonah Codex. H-Traet, reversed, Terth. Some believe it's a misspelling of Earth. Others say it's not a word at all. But one linguist pointed out something chilling. If you take each letter in H-Traet and place them at the same 13-point intervals shown on the map, they spell something else. The 13th. On March 13, 2025, in a quiet suburb outside Scranton, Pennsylvania, a first-grade teacher reported a disturbing discovery during afternoon art period. A child, Elias Boone, age 6, had turned in a drawing unlike any other. While other students were sketching rainbows and rockets, Elias drew a black triangle inside a circle, surrounded by 12 black dots, and one red dot placed far off to the side. The drawing included a stick figure labeled in a child's handwriting, "Me," and next to the red dot, "Not me." That night, Elias's parents tucked him into bed as usual. Their home had no broken locks, no broken windows, and no sign of forced entry. But by morning, Elias was gone. His bed was undisturbed. The baby monitor played static. A single crayon sat on the nightstand, red, sharpened to a needle point, and on the bedroom wall, written faintly in crayon, "Let me see." Security footage from inside the house captured nothing, but motion sensors triggered at 3:33 a.m. Only once. Only for 1.3 seconds. Investigators found a final piece of evidence, a folded piece of paper under Elias's pillow. It was a page torn from one of his school books, flipped upside down and drawn on in reverse. It showed the same triangle in circle symbol, 13 dots, and a single doorway drawn at the base of the triangle. Above the doorway, a name written in shaky red crayon. Not Elias, not me. The name was your name. Every system has an end. Every pattern, a point of collapse. But this one was never about finishing. It was about opening. For over 180 years, the 13 dots have circled one shape, a triangle. Some believed it was a warning, others, a map. But the truth is older, deeper, simpler. It's not a symbol, it's a keyhole. And the 13th dot, not a person, not a gate. The 13th is the moment you understand. In 2026, a secret project, Operation Golgotha, uncovered the final convergence point beneath Langdon Ridge. Using seismic imaging, researchers discovered that all 13 known sites, Triangle House, the staircase, the Jonah Codex chamber, etc., pointed to a central chamber, roughly 3.3 miles beneath the surface. They called it the final gate. No one has entered it, not physically, because it doesn't exist in three-dimensional space. Instead, it appears to those who've been marked, those who've seen the 13th dot, those who've heard the voice reversed, those who've dreamed of the staircase, those who've read this far. You've already felt it, haven't you? That cold pressure behind your ears, that flicker in the corner of your vision, that moment of synchronicity when a word repeats twice in two different rooms with no one else around. They're not coincidences, they're invitations. The Codex warned us, to open the eye is to bleed the world, but once opened, it never closes again. So now you have a choice. Forget this. Seal it away. Pretend it was fiction, or acknowledge it. Accept the pattern. Complete the shape. Because the triangle is a lock. The circle is the door. And you, reader, you are the 13th. Final frame. The screen fades to black. Then one line appears, scratched in pale gray, almost invisible.